Legal battles ahead, the future of trans and non-binary rights. In 2025, the struggle for trans and non-binary rights stands at a defining crossroads. While the past decade has seen remarkable progress in public awareness, identity affirmation, and legal recognition, the future of these rights now faces intense legal, political, and ideological challenges. The battle is no longer just about acceptance, it's about survival. Legal frameworks across the globe are being weaponized to either advance or dismantle the rights of gender-diverse people. And in this delicate moment of transition, what unfolds next in courtrooms, parliaments, and advocacy networks will determine the trajectory of generations to come. The legal history of trans and non-binary rights is relatively recent. For centuries, gender diversity was erased from the law, with only male and female categories recognized in legal systems. Even in societies where non-binary and third-gender roles existed culturally, such as hijras in South Asia, two-spirit identities in indigenous communities, or Afafin in Samoa, colonial laws erased or criminalized those identities. It wasn't until the late 20th and early 21st centuries that modern legal systems began acknowledging that gender is not binary. Landmark cases, progressive court rulings, and human rights campaigns have since pushed governments to update outdated laws and policies. But the backlash has been swift and severe. Today, legal recognition varies dramatically from one country to another. In progressive regions, such as New Zealand, Canada, Argentina, and parts of Western Europe, individuals can self-identify their gender without forced surgeries or psychiatric evaluations. Non-binary gender markers, like X on passports, have become available. Anti-discrimination laws include gender identity and expression. In contrast, many countries still refuse to legally recognize trans or non-binary people. Some require sterilization, surgery, or proof of medical necessity to change gender markers. Others criminalize transgender expression entirely, punishing individuals for simply living as themselves. And even in liberal democracies, we're now seeing a resurgence of laws designed to curtail the hard-won rights of gender-diverse individuals. One of the most urgent legal battlegrounds in 2025 is healthcare access. Gender-affirming care has been labeled essential by medical authorities such as the World Health Organization and American Medical Association. Yet, multiple states and countries are passing, or attempting to pass, bills that restrict, ban, or criminalize this care. These laws often begin with minors, under the guise of protecting children, but they quickly expand to include adults, providers, and even parents who support their trans children. This legal trend reflects a broader culture war that sees trans bodies as political battlegrounds. Laws denying healthcare do not protect anyone, they harm those already vulnerable and marginalize a population that deserves support, not scrutiny. Education, too, has become a key front in the legal war. In several parts of the world, we see legislation banning the discussion of gender identity in classrooms, removing inclusive curricula, and punishing educators who support trans and non-binary students. These "don't say gay or trans" laws are designed to create fear and silence. They deny students access to life-saving information and affirming environments. School policies around restroom access, pronouns, and dress codes are increasingly being litigated, with courts deciding whether students can express their identities freely. The outcomes of these legal cases will shape the mental health, safety, and academic futures of countless youth. Identification documents remain another focal point of legal struggle. Without accurate IDs, trans and non-binary people face barriers in everything from travel and employment to voting and housing. While some jurisdictions have streamlined the gender marker change process, others have tightened restrictions, requiring invasive procedures or judicial approval. In some places, new laws have revoked the right to change gender markers altogether. For non-binary individuals, the fight is even more complex. Most legal systems are still structured around binary categories, making it difficult or impossible to have one's identity reflected on legal paperwork. The question of legal gender recognition for non-binary people, should it exist, and in what form, is currently being debated in multiple Supreme Courts around the world. Workplace protections are similarly under threat. In countries with strong labor rights, trans and non-binary workers are often protected under broad anti-discrimination statutes. However, these protections are unevenly enforced. In places without such laws, employees can be fired, harassed, or passed over for promotion simply because of their identity. Lawsuits around workplace discrimination, wrongful termination, and bathroom access continue to fill court dockets. Unions, employers, and human rights commissions are now grappling with how to balance inclusivity, privacy, and freedom of expression. And as artificial intelligence and remote work become more prevalent, new legal questions arise. How do we protect gender-diverse employees in virtual spaces? How do online platforms reflect or erase non-binary identity? The intersection of religion and law also adds complexity. In many nations, religious freedom is being used as a legal defense to deny services to trans and non-binary individuals. From refusing healthcare and employment to blocking adoption and education rights, some institutions argue that accommodating gender diversity violates their beliefs. Courts are increasingly asked to weigh religious liberty against anti-discrimination principles. This tension often pits constitutional rights against one another, leading to deeply divisive and precedent-setting rulings. The legal frameworks we establish now will decide whether trans and non-binary people can live freely in societies where religious and secular values often collide. Immigration law presents another urgent challenge. For trans and non-binary migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees, legal systems can be life-threatening. Many flee violence, persecution, or criminalization in their home countries. Yet, host nations often lack proper procedures to assess claims related to gender identity. Detention centers may place individuals based on sex assigned at birth, exposing them to abuse and trauma. Legal name and gender recognition for immigrants remains inconsistent, even in countries that allow such changes for citizens. Advocates are now pushing for international legal standards that protect gender-diverse people crossing borders, because identity should never be a barrier to safety. Family law is not immune from this war. Courts across the globe are being asked to decide on custody battles where one parent affirms their child's gender identity and the other does not. Legal guardianship, adoption rights for trans individuals, and parental rights after transitioning are all under scrutiny. In some cases, judges have ruled against trans parents, citing confusion or instability. Others have denied name and gender marker changes for minors. These legal decisions often reflect social bias more than legal fact, revealing how deeply embedded transphobia can be within judicial systems. The fight for family rights is a fight for the fundamental recognition of trans and non-binary people as capable, loving, and legitimate parents and children. On the international stage, human rights law is being tested. Trans and non-binary issues are increasingly being brought before bodies like the European Court of Human Rights, the Inter-American Court, and the United Nations Human Rights Council. These institutions are beginning to recognize gender identity under broader human rights protections. Still, enforcement is inconsistent, and many member states push back against what they call Western gender ideology. As geopolitical tensions rise, the rights of trans and non-binary people become entangled with nationalism, populism, and cultural defense. What emerges is not just a legal debate, but a global reckoning with what it means to recognize humanity in all its forms. So where does this leave us? The future of trans and non-binary rights is inseparable from the legal battles we are witnessing today. These aren't just policy disagreements, they're existential fights over who gets to be seen, heard, and protected under the law. While the road ahead is steep, it is not without hope. Legal advocates, grassroots organizers, queer legal scholars, and trans-led nonprofits are working tirelessly to defend and expand rights. Court cases are being won. Precedents are being set. Movements are growing. To move forward, we need systemic transformation. Laws must be written with gender inclusivity at their core, not as an afterthought. Judicial training must include gender diversity and unconscious bias. Trans and non-binary people must be included in policymaking, legislative drafting, and public discourse, not just as subjects of law, but as its architects. We need global coalitions that prioritize intersectionality, equity, and justice. And most importantly, we need allies to speak up when silence becomes complicity. It's also critical to remember that laws alone won't solve everything. Legal recognition is powerful, but without social acceptance, community support, and cultural change, it can fall short. We must pair legal reforms with education, visibility, and empathy. Real change happens when systems shift, but also when hearts and minds evolve. In 2025, the legal battles ahead are daunting, but they are not unwinnable. They call for vigilance, unity, and courage. They require us to imagine a world where trans and non-binary people are not merely tolerated, but respected, protected, and celebrated. This future is not just possible, it is necessary. The question is not whether the legal system will change. It's whether it will change in time to protect those most at risk. The answer lies not only in courts and legislatures, but in the collective will of people who refuse to be silent in the face of injustice. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Stay informed, stay vocal, and stay on the right side of history. The fight for trans and non-binary rights isn't over, but it is far from lost.